Hello mountain bikers, and welcome back to your favorite gear show. March has been a really busy month with a ton of exciting product releases, none more so perhaps than SRAM's new wireless transmission, aptly named Transmission. We'll be talking you through the main points of this oh-so-smooth system today, together with some fresh new hubs and an interesting chainring concept. But before we get into the review section, time for our customary industry news roundup with a month in a minute. We might need just a little bit more than a minute. We've got a lot of ground to cover today. Let's dive in. TRP also made some transmission noise this month with the introduction of their all-new Evo drivetrains. Available with either 12 or 7 gears, it's here to compete with the two big S's. Bergtech wants to bling you out for spring with their new black sapphire and candy spruce green colorways. E13 has some shiny new bits too, in the form of their all-new Helix Race cranksets. Industry 9 brings even more fun to your cockpit with their new IRIX headset, which allows you to mix and match headset components in 11 different colors. The new O-Chain R chain device is only available in silver, but it offers 4 different float settings to let you dial in your ride for different tracks. EXT just dropped its new super thinner damper fluid, which is said to be the most stable damper fluid ever developed. Cavans just launched a shorter travel bike for those slightly mellower trails. Commensal keeps teasing its new Meta, which is starting to look like it might be production ready soon. Zeroed has refined their gearbox, belt-driven downhill destroyer with the introduction of the G3. Giant brings new battery tech to the e-bike game with the launch of their new Giant Trans X Advanced E Plus Elite, which delivers the best power-to-weight ratio currently on the market. YT has also worked on battery tech, finally delivering its long-awaited 720 watt-hour battery for the Decoy. Marin has refreshed its Alpine Trail E models with updated motors and new spec. If you're looking for a short-travel analog bike to accompany you on any adventure, Canyon's new Neuron might fit the bill. Gorilla Gravity just dropped its 2023 line with new colors, specs and buying options as well. If you're worried about thieves making off with one of these new bikes you might have treated yourself to, take a look at SNCC's new GPS-enabled bike security device. V just introduced their 2023 Gravity line with new casings, compounds and tire models. Look good and feel good with Alpine Star's 2023 collection, featuring apparel for all kinds of riding. French upstart Animos has refreshed its 2023 range as well, which now also includes an all-weather jacket. And to conclude this news section, Bike Yoke has entered the gravel, or cross-country world, with its all-new Revive 272 dropper post. Woof, that was a lot, and we're not done yet. Time to jump into the reviews. If it was ever a question as to why SRAM took it upon themselves to create a universal derailleur hanger, we've got the answer now. UDH is cool, and we love being able to find a replacement hanger in pretty much any bike shop these days, but it seems that was merely a Trojan horse for the true plan behind the design, the direct mount derailleur. This new derailleur makes do without a hanger, and instead just mounts up directly to the frame where it clamps down on the stay from both sides. By now, you've probably seen lots of clips of people standing on their transmission derailleurs, and while we don't want to encourage you to go ham on your very expensive new bike parts, we did the same to test it in the name of science. Yep, it's solid. Aside from the new mounting interface, the transmission platform includes plenty of other updates. There's a fully redesigned cassette, a new T-type chain, new remote controller pods, new cranksets, and perhaps the best news of all, individually replaceable spare parts. That's right, you can now swap out individual parts of your super expensive derailleur rather than throwing the whole thing away after an unlucky crash. On the trail, our first few shifts on the new drivetrain had us questioning if we had even changed gears, which is somewhat expected with close ratio 12-speed drivetrains. The addition of a more closely spaced second gear on the new cassette is much appreciated and makes for a very useful climbing gear. Where we really started to scratch our heads was under load, and on the gas, where shifts remained seamless despite our best efforts to cause problems. When pointed downhill, the most noticeable difference with transmission over previous generation SRAM Axis drivetrains is how quiet it is. A common complaint among many Axis users is the notably louder chain slap from the derailleur compared to cable-actuated models. With transmission, clutch spring tension is said to be similar to the previous models, but chain retention is where improvements have been made to allow for a quieter ride. We were pleased with how quiet our initial test bike was and felt confident pushing the bike as hard as we liked without any concern of losing a chain. Shifting under load is where transmission shines, and this is of course most noticeable when changing gears while climbing. Because the system only shifts at the exact cassette ramp locations, individual shifts are seamless. What did require some attention was rapidly shifting from a descent into a climb or vice versa. Coming from previous generation Axis components, where each press of the remote results in an instant shift of the derailleur, the new shift pattern of transmission took some getting used to and required us to keep track of the number of clicks when shifting rapidly. Because the system only allows the derailleur to change gears at the exact shift ramps, The system will queue shifts while waiting for the next available ramp, which in some instances creates a delay. In our experience, this could result in more shifts queued than anticipated when trying to move across the cassette as quickly as possible, leaving us in a higher or lower gear than planned once all shifts were completed. A little weird at first, but easy enough to adapt to. As for longevity, the system has shifted incredibly smoothly for the duration of our several months of long-term testing, as well as on other bikes that we've tested more sporadically. And as previously mentioned, individual parts of the derailleur can now be replaced separately, which is great news when it comes to the long-term ownership experience. We have a more in-depth review available for you right here on the channel, and there's an article up on our site as well, should you wish to dig deeper. Links in the description below. Hope has been making plenty of noise over the past year or so, with their new Tech 4 brakes impressing us to the point of earning them our Product of the Year award in 2022, and their new F22s shooting right up our flat pedal rankings as well. But it seems they were not quite done yet. Hope has just released the all-new Pro 5 hubs, the latest in a long line of hubs that have of course cemented themselves as true classics in this space. The Pro 5 features several key improvements, all of which aim mainly to reduce drag. First of all, Hope has now implemented a 6-pulse system that engages the drive ring 3 pulses at a time. The result is much faster engagement, 108 points on the Pro 5 as opposed to 44 points on the Pro 4, while still maintaining enough strength to deal with the rigors of mountain biking. The pawls now use lighter springs that cradle the pawl in the hub body, which will help reduce drag and improve the durability of the drive system. A new external labyrinth seal will improve sealing while also reducing drag. Hope also increased the spacing between and around the bearings and introduced a new axle shape, which should increase the strength and stiffness of the axle and prolong the lifespan of the bearings. You can get the hub with all modern free hub options, and multiple axle spacing standards are supported with end cap adapters. Naturally, as with all things Hope, the Pro 5 hubs are fully serviceable and rebuildable with Hope's fantastic spare parts availability commitment to provide peace of mind for years to come. To test the new hubs, we took delivery of a pair of Hope hoops with the Pro 5s laced to Hope's own Fortis rim with an internal width of 30 mm. The first question on our mind was, of course, what do they sound like? Well, good news or bad news, depending on which camp you're in. Before mounting the wheels to our bike, we thought they might be quite loud, but it turns out they're actually significantly quieter than the outgoing Pro 4s. With the tighter engagement and the lighter springs, the hubs now give off a quite pleasant buzz that all but disappears at speed. If you like riding with a swarm of angry bees behind you, you'll now have to look elsewhere. The second question would be, how do they spin? Well, all that effort to reduce drag has really paid off, it seems. In the work stand, the Pro 5s will spin forever. Even just spinning the cassette itself on the hub is impressively drag-free. On the trail, this feeling of speed persisted, even with the relatively heavy Hope Fortis rims laced up with heavy spokes. The hubs roll really well, and the engagement of the rear hub feels both quick and solid. Stomp on the pedals and go. We're fans of quick engagement, and the Pro 5s can now compete with some of the quickest engaging hubs out there. Our test wheels are strong and stiff, which translates to direct and snappy handling. Push as hard as you like into turns or transitions, there's no vagueness here. All in all, we think Hope has done a fantastic job taking their hubs to the next level. We will continue testing to suss out any longevity issues, but for now, our first impressions are very positive. We're always on the lookout for a little extra bling for our bikes, and Absolute Black's PVD-coated Rainbow Chainring certainly fits the bill. Since Absolute Black is also one of the original purveyors of the oval chainring, we took this opportunity to check 2 boxes at the same time, freshen up our drivetrain, and test something that would be new to us. Absolute Black's chainrings have a great reputation. In fact, they've been sitting pretty atop our annual audience survey rankings in this category for a few years by now. The PVD-coated oil slick version is pretty slick indeed, but it doesn't fit in with Absolute Black's usually very competitive pricing. That's because the physical vapor deposition, or PVD, process used to cover these chainrings with a titanium layer is quite demanding and costly. Having said that, the product is very well finished and doesn't leave you feeling ripped off when you take it out of the box. We fitted our test sample to a new Raceface era crank, which was uneventful. And then we headed out for our first ride, curious as to what that oval shape would feel like. The science behind the oval shape is fairly sound, even though there is no conclusive evidence as to its effectiveness. In short, the idea behind the oval shape is to make it easier to turn the cranks over during the dead spot of the pedal stroke, with your crank arms in the 12 and 6 o'clock positions. The wider part of the chainring then comes into play to provide maximum resistance during the strongest part of the pedal stroke, at 9 and 3 o'clock. In theory, this should allow your strongest muscles to do the big part of the work, while avoiding other, less well-equipped muscles being solicited during the most ineffective part of the pedal stroke, which Absolute Black in turn claims will help you conserve energy. The company itself has produced some studies with the help of researchers from a Slovenian university, which points to significant advantages like a 7% reduction in oxygen consumption and a 10% decrease in heart rate. But these findings have not yet been validated by other organizations to date. Now, aside from the science, we simply wanted to feel what these chainrings do for ourselves, and we were quite surprised by a couple of aspects. First of all, it's not hard to adapt your pedal stroke to the oval chainring. In fact, it feels very smooth when you're on the power right from the get-go. When just pedaling along flat ground with minimal effort, you can feel the cranks get away from you a bit during the dead stroke, but after just a couple of rides, this feeling disappears as your legs adapt to the new reality. Steep, slow climbs is where these chainrings really made a difference for us, letting the legs push hard during the optimal part of the stroke without having to struggle to then get the cranks past the dead spots. Both technical and smooth climbing felt better with the oval chainring than with the normal chainring, and the bike felt less draggy as a result. In particular, we had less of that heavy legs feeling on longer climbs, even on days when the legs were tired to start with. And we were also able to use a lower pedaling cadence in some sections, as there is less need to accelerate ahead of the dead stroke part. We weren't able to drastically change our gearing or push a heavier gear than usual for prolonged periods of time, but we did see a couple of PRs pop up on Strava without having specifically tried to make them happen. Definitely interesting, and we're certainly leaving the oval chainring on one of our bikes to keep comparing it to the regular chainring on a regular basis. As for the product itself, the PVD coating seems to be pretty hard-wearing indeed, which takes some of the sting out of the price tag. The narrow wide profile of the teeth works great in action. We've not had any drop chains so far after a couple of months of testing. Good stuff. Okay then, that's the end of the show. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. As always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And until next time, happy trails.